Hello again, and welcome to another Fireside Chat with Waytat. Um, I hope that everyone who's listening has heard the first episode. Um, also, hope that you liked the first episode. I know as of right now, with my channel statistics, it's hasn't been viewed yet, but I have a feeling that's because it's a bit of a change of form. Um, but hopefully this is something that you guys enjoy. Um, and yeah, so don't really have anything to talk about. I guess just man, it's been I've been having a go of it still since last episode. Um, it's been a little bit more difficult to keep going with the episodes. Not that I'm like wanting to quit or anything. It's more just been pretty tired. So uh but yeah, let's actually spin my topic wheel, which I actually haven't fixed how long it takes to pick the topic. I really hope I pull the one that hmm I'm gonna save that one. That one I need to prepare for. I'm also not gonna tell you what it is because it's I would like these to be a little bit of a mystery. Oh, come on. Come on, wheel. Sorry, I have to remove that one from the wheel for a moment because it just rolled it another time in a row. Okay. So, what is the biggest project I'm working on besides Waytat? Uh, so it's actually kind of funny because I'm working on a couple of them. Um, I think the biggest one, work level wise, is I am working on developing a role playing game system. Um, it's still very early development, but kind of the core concept is that it's a multi dice system. So it's using everything from a D3 to a D100 for roles. Um, and that's kind of the I don't want to say like the biggest project that I'm working on besides Waytat because it's one that I'm okay with slowly developing. It's kind of the same deal with a war game that I've been working on off and on for a long time. I think it's been a few years, and it's basically ready to play. I just need to make the rest of the factions. I can talk about that one this episode because I genuinely just really enjoy that one. Um, but the the I think like really big thing that I've been working on lately is I'm a huge fan of Warhammer 40K and Warhammer 30K. So for a little while, I had the idea of running like a Horse Heresy um, game using the fifth edition D&D system, and I I've been working on that. I have not updated anything on it for last couple weeks because I had my first session with it. I wasn't super happy with how it turned out. So it's been a little bit difficult to figure out if I want to keep going on it or if I want to retry doing something else or if I, just want to hold off on it for a while. Um, Also, it's something where I wanted to run it for my friends. And that was who I had the first session with. But we also don't get to hang out very often, and we don't get to play often. So it's hard to tell a story that big and that grand. Especially because for the story, I wasn't going with like canonical Primarchs. I was just having my friends come up with the Primarchs that they were going to play as. Um, so yeah, I mean that's kind of like the biggest as far as work intensive goes. Um, I also have like a book that's on pause right now because that's also a big mental and emotional investment. Um, but I mean that's also something that I just really love doing. And that one I'm also not really going to talk about because it's hard for me to talk about that one without immediately jumping into spoilers because I'm really bad at talking about that book. Uh, so um, instead, I think I'll talk a bit about the I think I'll do a combination of talk about the war game and talk about the role playing game. So I'm actually going to talk about the war game first. So I, for the longest time, did not have a name for it because I was just calling it the Weeb War Game. And the reason why I was calling that, it should be kind of self-explanatory, but the reason why I was calling it the Weeb War Game was because I am a big fan of anime, and I wanted to capture kind of like the big anime fights. Um, I don't think I've necessarily done that with this, but I basically decided like, okay, I would like to sit down. I'd like to make a world that is kind of satirizing some of our modern world and also like uses anime tropes in a way that's really I don't even necessarily want to say unique, but just in a way that I would want them to be used and ways that I find that are interesting to use them. Um, and so the system itself is a lot more detailed than like a large scale war game. It's it's like a smaller squad based war game. Um, and the world that is set in, I did finally come up with a name for it. Funnily enough, because of the role playing game that I'm making. The name I came up for it was Shiryu or Shiryu, which is four dragons. Um, and the kind of the idea behind the lore is that ancient humanity, which would kind of be, I guess, would be us, but it's a different world. Um, Developed to such a point, both magically and technologically, that any war would kind of just be the end of humanity. So of course, a war happened, which drove all of humanity underground to wait out the conflict. And while all of the radiation and magical storms and stuff were happening above, the world above was taken over by monsters and dragons, and in particular the four um the four dragons, uh Zhuque, Zhanwu, uh Baiho, or Baihao. Baihao is how I Baihu. Uh and Quinlong. And so they had basically taken over the world and ruled over the monsters. And then, kind of out of nowhere, Humanity came out of their system of bunkers and hidden settlements in the forests, and from the underground, much, much stronger than they were even before, and they started carving out an empire. Um, and fortunately for humanity, and fortunately for everything else, there was a specific battle, the Battle of Theonia, where some say once one group of humans betrayed another, others say it was friendly fire. Um, and in the resulting kind of powder keg between the side that was more scientific and technological and the side that was more magical, um, the human empire divided into a bunch of different factions, and that's kind of the state of the world now. Is every faction trying to rebuild from that. And I for the first edition of the game, or at least the playtest edition of the game, um, the human factions would be the Sisters of the Sword, um, who are like a group of religious fanatics, who want to find the ancient legendary weapons of old human heroes under the assumption that if they find all of them and collect them all, and have a swordswoman wield each one of them, that they can resurrect uh, ancient humanity. And they also really like to press home that like the reason why these legendary heroes are dead was because they were men, um, and that they let their ego get to them, and so their thought process is that, well, obviously women are immune to having an ego, so if we give women this power, no problems at all. Um, which I hope is very clearly like that's a bit of a satirical take on fanaticism and religion. But also where the second faction was the Slayers Academy, who were basically like the monster hunters and have since really fanaticized and turned into like these monster hunting, monster killing zealots, um, that just without question, without qualm, like decimate entire populations of creatures that are really supposed to be there, like that also pose no threat to humanity, but in their mind, like humanity's the only thing that deserves to live. Um, then there is McKenna. Oh, also I should the Slayers Academy are like the very very like weeby Japanese one, and they're like intentionally like flanderized Japanese. Um, because I feel like that's the best way to poke fun at us weebs. Um, but McKenna are like they're kind of like the Gundam fascists. Um, they were the super sciencey boys, um, that decided that the best way to ensure humanity's survival is to get rid of magic and basically embrace a scientific um, meritocracy slash capitalist fascist system, um, which is definitely one way to perceive what's best for humanity. But and then their rivals, Calypson, that kind of went the opposite direction. Their whole idea is that magic is superior, and so they have a society that's built on your magical talent, where the more magic you have, the more rights you have, and it's to the point where someone who has magic at all has just outright ownership over the unmagicked. Uh, and then the dragon factions. Quinlong is the dragon of wood and life, and he leads basically like the residents of the forests. So he uses like land spirits and elves. He's also the one that has Lamia. Um, the uh, Baihu has the war courts, which has like orcs and beast folk, and is also kind of like the most militarized and also most strategic of the dragon courts. And then you have Jean Wu, who commands the undead, and also like water demons and water spirits. Although most of his army, as I've made it, are mostly undead. That's because he was forced to become undead against his will. Um, and then Zhu Kuei leads just demons. He's the fire dragon. And he leads basically like yokai and other mythological Eastern spirits and stuff that you'd probably see as like a one-off reference in something like Jujutsu Kaisen. Um, and the and yeah, it's been a lot of fun to make. Um, I've really tried to push for the focus to be on like the heroes, um, which are like your leader units. I've also tried to make sure to have enough unique heroes in every army. Um, my plan is actually that like as I'm playtesting with people and can convince them to play and stuff, of adding more heroes based on like in-game stuff. I've also actually thought about doing like maybe yearly or like every 3 or 4 year kind of tournaments. Once the game launches um to basically um update the system to bring it to uh the next edition, and kind of use what the players give feedback on and use their heroes. I mean, with permission, of course, and just some of the cool stuff that's happened and make some of that canon. Um, that would also be the case for like the deaths of like canonical characters that would happen at those events. It would also be like where I'd introduce like legendary units and stuff, like kind of like the regiments of renown for fantasy Warhammer Fantasy. Um, but yeah, that's a project that I've really enjoyed doing. I'm actually very proud that I've managed to finish a rule system. That is a rarity for me. Um, and it's been a lot of fun making like the items and weapons and faction rules and stuff. It is a lot of work. I do hit kind of roadblocks with that often. But luckily it's a project that I can leave and come back to um, pretty easily. I'm also very proud of the lore and like the kind of like the satirizing that I've been able to do with it. So I mean that's been a lot of fun for me. Um, let's see. So the RPG system. Um, the RPG system does already have a name. It is called Monsters Min. Oh wait, nope. Mutants, Minions, and Masterminds. It is or I've just been calling it 3M on all my documents, which is why I don't have it memorized. Really selling it well here. But 3M is a system that I really want it to be um focused on like all the tiers of play. So not just having rules for combat, but having like rules for exploration and social encounters and like social challenges, and also having like actual rules for running puzzles and stuff. Um, but it's also an RPG that I want it to be a lot more in depth and involved, and also be a lot more like old school classic RPGs. Um, so it has like environmental tests and challenges. There's, I mean, I even have like temperature ranges that player characters can survive at, which is actually a lot easier to figure out than how it might sound. Um, like so far, I haven't finished the rules. It's still very very early with that, like extremely early with that. But just from what I've toyed around with so far for like character creation and stuff, it's a lot. I would say a lot more hardcore and brutal than a lot of other modern role playing games. The big reason for that is the low rolls and also the low hit points. I mean the tankiest character that I made has I think 12 hit points at first level, which in D&D 5th edition, um you could very easily make like a barbarian with 17, 18 hit points um at first level. You could also I think pretty easily make a couple other like pretty strong character combos at first level that have really high hit points. But yeah, that character that I made with 12 hit points, that was kind of like their only thing. Most of their other scores sucked, so their whole thing was having high hit points. Um, and then the other thing that I think's gonna make it difficult is like that there's very low rolls most of the time. You roll a d4 on things. Uh, if you're bad at something, you roll a d3, and most of the time the target number for you to hit is below a 10. Um, so it's I hope it'll bring a much different feel. There's also a lot more rewards for like rules lawyers at the table, and also some rule support for people that want to tell more of a story than anything else. Um, it has also been a lot of fun for me because it's given me the opportunity to like take a lot of my it's like random one-off fantasy things and kind of compress them all together into a shared world. Which that's really nice. It's really helped to organize things a bit uh for the story. Um, I I do have a general fantasy setting. It's kind of so what I wanted to do is I want to make the core book, and then make a few source books. Um, Shiryu is actually one of them that I want to have a source book for. But those source books would be where you get the information to to run different games. It's like that's where things like the heritages and also where like the classes and stuff would be. Um and yeah, I'm very excited about it. And these are things I think are going to be years down the line. Because the biggest challenge that I'm kind of running into is something that I might add to the wheel. But I I'm really bad at drawing, and I think the only reason for that is because I kind of got the wind knocked out of my sails when I was a little kid about drawing. Because I had at the time started to trace, which I've learned as an adult is a very important step in learning how to draw. And I had a teacher tell me like to not trace because it's cheating. And I mean, it was for a school project, but at the same time, like I was tracing images that like were not going to be used for that project. If I'm being honest, I was slacking off. I wasn't doing the actual work, but they came over and told me like uh doing that's cheating. And so I stopped, and I didn't really try drawing for a long time. I just kind of accepted that like I'm bad at drawing. Um, so now I'm kind of in a situation where I'm at an impasse. I need an artist. I have been using like photo editing software like GIMP. I do also really want to learn Blender. Um, not really have the time for that because I have a job prison. I also have I have WayTat. So I don't really have time to dedicate to learning Blender. But that'd be very useful for uh, designing miniatures and stuff for my games. Um, which also would actually mean that my 3D printer would get some use because I do actually have a 3D printer. Um, but yeah, it doesn't really get any use right now because it's whew, I got a lot to learn before I can print stuff that I feel like is worth it. Um, but yeah, I think that's actually gonna be it for this episode. I mean, hopefully you enjoyed. I hope that's fun. Also, I hope it goes without saying, but my OCs do not steal. Uh, especially because if you do, there's a lot of evidence that I've been making this stuff for a while. So, um, but yeah, we can tell me what you think. Um, tell me how this episode was. Give me any topic ideas that you might have, not just for this, but also for all of my shows in general. Um, yeah, I mean, thank you so much for listening. Uh, I, I mean, I'll hopefully hear from you again on Wednesday when the next episode of Waytack comes out. And then hopefully again on Friday with Waytat Nerd. Um, yeah, this has been a fireside chat with Waytat. I've been William. Thank you for listening. Have a good night.